Hello, my name is Julian. I'm the developer of the Air-Motion Artisan Coffee Roaster. Today I'd like to introduce you to this amazing machine. So let's do a roast. The first thing we do is set our water dousing time. Set it to 35 seconds. And then we want to set our target temperature. We're setting it at 225 degrees Celsius. I thought for today I would roast an African bean, a bit more delicate in its nature, but we want to enhance its flavor notes, achieve a natural and earthy sweetness, some sweet honeycomb and fruitiness like sweet plums, together with a lingering dark creamy chocolate mouthfeel in the finish. The next thing we are going to do is switch on the Cyclone. The Cyclone is a very important component in the air roasting system. It immediately removes any residual dust from the beans, and then throughout the roast it removes skins or chaff coming off the beans, as well as any smoke that appears towards the end of the roast. And by removing all the impurities immediately from the roast chamber, we are left with a clean, smooth tasting cup of coffee. Here we go, switch the Cyclone on. I just love the sound when I turn the Cyclone on. It's like firing up the jet engines. It all started just over 10 years ago when I inherited my first air roaster. The machine was about 26 years old at the time and was quite simple in its technology. I had an on and off switch. You set the target temperature, load the beans, press a button to start the roast, and when the roaster reached its target temperature after about 9 minutes, the roaster would switch itself off, douse the beans with a fine spray of water to stop the beans from roasting any further, and that was it. I remember I even had to scoop the beans out of the roast chamber with a plastic jug. It was a very simple process. Before we start the roast, we turn up the blowers a bit and then load the beans into the roast chamber. By turning up the blowers at this stage, we remove any residual dust from the beans. It's now time to load our beans into the roast chamber. With air roasting, there's no need to charge or heat up your roast chamber before you roast. You actually start roasting from ambient room temperature, and with the immediate heat response from the roaster elements, you then save on time and energy costs. Saying this, we do have a prime function, which does allow you to start the roast from the same temperature in both winter and summer. This normally only takes a few seconds to do. Our roast has now started and it's on its way. I had a modest little coffee roastery inside a bistro cafe that also had an artisan bakery attached to it. It wasn't long that I had been roasting before our customers started talking about our coffee, and then compliments and accolades came from both the media as well as our peers in the coffee industry. So what was so different about this simple machine? What was I doing that was so different? It was at this point that I fell in love with the whole air roasting process. In the first stage of the roast, we want to get as much heat as possible into the bean in order to get the bean to start to expand a bit, where the skins separate themselves from the bean in order to allow moisture to be extracted. It is only when this happens that we can start developing the bean and getting the sugars, the amino acids and chemical reactions to activate. We are now 7 minutes into our roast, and looking at our graph, we're starting to get a beautiful profile developing in our roast. Our element temperature has now reached 270 degrees, and bean temperature we're hitting 155 degrees. We are now ending the drying phase or the yellowing phase, and we're going into our Maillard reaction phase, where we start activating the sugars, the amino acids and the chemical reactions in the bean. The air roasting technology consists of blowers, heating elements and a roast chamber. Clean air is sucked into the machine and is passed over heating elements, and then is forced into the roast chamber, elevating the beans in a stream of hot air. As the heated air is able to reach all sides of the suspended beans at the same time, it provides for an even and consistent roast, therefore using convection heat to roast the beans. The first phase in the roast process is to apply as much heat to the bean as possible. This allows the bean to expand a bit and start shedding its skins or chaff. Once this is done, the bean is now able to release its moisture. And as it does this, the beans start changing color from green to yellow. At this point we start getting yeasty and bready odors coming off the beans. As we get closer to the next phase and sugars start activating and we start smelling odors of sweet waffles and pancakes, there the sugars have activated and the chemical reactions and amino acids start activating. This phase is referred to as the Maillard reaction. The next phase is the first crack or development phase. This is the phase where the heat has now reached the center of the bean. The remaining moisture builds up pressure in the bean, causing it to expand rapidly, and this rapid expansion of the bean gives off a sound like popping popcorn. This phase, also referred to as the development phase, where many chemical reactions also happen in the bean, as well as the caramelization of sugars. This is directly responsible for the development of the flavors and the characteristics of the roasted bean. I've just pressed the first crack button, which records the first crack. The graph shows first crack time, development percentage, total time roasted, and the development time itself. We have now reached the end of our roast. With the air roasting system, we end off the roast by dousing our beans with a fine mist of water, which evaporates as it touches the beans, stopping the roast immediately when it reaches our target temperature. After working with my old air roaster for over 10 years and falling in love with the whole air roasting process, I felt it was time to bring this technology into the 21st century. And it was at this point that I decided to develop and build my very own air roaster. I found two amazing engineers. The one worked on the fabrication of the machine, while the other worked on the control panel and the brains of the machine. And together we worked tirelessly for many hours, days, weeks and months. And eventually the Air-Motion Artisan Roaster was born. We introduced a touchscreen interface control panel to control the roast and at the same time record the roast profile with different graphs in real time. Our beans are now cooling down in the roast chamber. As the beans cool in the roast chamber, it goes into a self-cleaning process, leaving the roast chamber clean and ready for the next roast, as well as eliminating the need for any routine cleaning and maintenance on the machine. another perfect roast. Part of the dream was to share my passion for coffee. When I started in coffee over 10 years ago, it was quite a close-knit industry with very few roasters out there, guarding the secrets of their trade, and coffee roasting was quite mysterious and intimidating to get into. But things have changed in the industry where there's a lot more sharing and information and roasting profiles and forums, and all for the good of promoting a new coffee culture. This is what drove me to develop my Air Roaster, a machine that is simple in its technology but sophisticated in its application, producing some of the best coffee around. I built a machine that anyone can use, from the novice to the experienced roaster, providing ease of use, consistency in roasting, a uniqueness in one's coffee offering, and definitely the latest trend in roasting today. Thanks for joining me. It's all in the taste.
Air-Motion Roasters. It's all in the taste.